There is a war over the destiny of the chosen ones that you can't see. There's a reason your life has never been easy. There's a reason you felt out of place, misunderstood, targeted, or constantly under pressure while others seem to move freely, unaffected. From an early age, you sensed that something about you was different. Not better, not worse, just different. Maybe it was your depth, your compassion, your resilience, or the fact that, no matter how many times life tried to break you, you kept getting back up. What if I told you that your struggles were not random, that your suffering wasn't just a series of unfortunate events? What if I told you you were chosen, but with that choosing came a war? Not the kind of war fought with bullets and bombs. Not a war you can see with your eyes or hear with your ears. This is a spiritual war, a battle in the unseen realm. A war waged over your purpose, your calling, your potential. And the most dangerous part of it all, you may not even know it's happening. You go about your life, questioning your worth, doubting your path, wondering why doors shut, why people betray you, why you keep feeling resistance every time you try to rise. It's not because you're weak. It's because you're marked. You see, when you're chosen, you're marked by heaven and targeted by hell. Your destiny threatens systems. Your voice shakes structures. Your mere presence exposes lies. And so the enemy doesn't wait for you to rise before he strikes. He comes when you're young. He comes when you're vulnerable. He uses people closest to you. He plants seeds of insecurity, abandonment, fear, and shame. He wants you confused. He wants you silent. He wants you to never discover who you are. Because if you ever woke up, truly woke up, to who you are and what you carry, you'd be unstoppable. This war isn't personal, it's prophetic. The attacks weren't because of what you did wrong. They were because of what you were born to do right. The enemy saw your light before you did. That's why he tried to dim it early. That's why relationships failed. That's why you were betrayed. That's why you felt isolated. That's why you struggled to fit in, because you weren't meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. You were meant to lead. And leaders are tested in the fire before they ever wear a crown. So if you feel like you're under attack, if your life feels like a constant battle, you're not crazy and you're not cursed. You're in the middle of a war. A war over your destiny. A war that can't be seen with physical eyes, but it's very real. And in this war, knowing who you are is your greatest weapon. Because once you know who you are, nothing and no one can stop you from becoming it. And now, it's time to see what you've been blind to. It's time to fight back. The invisible battlefield, what you're not seeing. You wake up every morning and go through life as if everything you see is all there is. The people, the places, the circumstances, they feel real, solid, tangible. And yet, deep inside, something tells you that there's more. You feel it when you're alone. You feel it when the world goes quiet. You sense a pressure on your chest, a resistance in the air, like you're pushing against something you can't name. And maybe, just maybe, you've dismissed it, blamed it on stress, on your past, on bad luck. But what if I told you it's not in your head? What if the battle you feel is real, even though you can't see it? There is a war going on, and it's not over territory or wealth or power. It's not being broadcast on the evening news. It's quieter than that, more subtle, more deadly. It's a war being fought in the realm of the unseen. A war over souls, a war over destinies, and especially a war over yours. Because when you were born, you weren't just another name on a birth certificate. You were marked, not by men, not by the world, but by God. Marked for a purpose, marked for greatness, marked to break chains that have held generations captive. And because of that, because of what you carry, the battle started before you even understood who you were. This war doesn't always look like conflict. Sometimes it looks like confusion. Sometimes it comes in the form of discouragement, isolation, or delay. Sometimes it wears the face of rejection. You try to rise, and something pushes you back. You try to love, and your heart gets broken. You try to speak, and your voice gets silenced. Have you ever noticed how, when you get close to a breakthrough, chaos erupts in your life? Have you ever tried to change your life only to be hit with wave after wave of resistance? That's not coincidence. That's spiritual warfare. You are not just living in a physical world. You are walking through a battlefield invisible to the natural eye. And the truth is, most people never realize this. They spend their entire lives fighting the wrong enemy, blaming people, circumstances, or even themselves, when all along, the real enemy was spiritual. The real war was internal, emotional, and energetic. Because the enemy doesn't need to kill your body to stop your destiny. He just needs to get you to doubt your worth, to abandon your purpose, to settle for less, to numb your calling with distractions. If he can convince you that you're just average, that your voice doesn't matter, that your pain is proof you're cursed, then he's already won the battle. But here's the most dangerous part of it all. This war is designed to be invisible. Because what you can't see, you won't fight. And what you won't fight, you can't win. The enemy's greatest weapon is stealth. He wants you to believe you're just going through a rough season. He wants you to normalize the chaos, to think this is just the way life is, that you're just unlucky, unworthy, unseen. But those thoughts are not yours. They were planted. And the battlefield isn't just around you, it's in your mind. Your thoughts are under siege. Your faith is under siege. Your identity is under siege. And if you keep living unaware, you'll keep surrendering without even knowing you're losing. You have to understand something. Being chosen doesn't mean an easy life. It means a targeted one. The moment heaven placed a calling on your life, hell placed a target on your back. That's why you've been through things others haven't. That's why you've faced betrayals, abandonment, delays, and darkness that seem to come out of nowhere. It's because you are dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are a threat. But threats must be silenced. And if they can't destroy you physically, they'll attack you spiritually. Through relationships that drain you. Through environments that dim your light. Through voices, inside and outside, that whisper, you're not good enough. You're not ready. Who do you think you are? They don't come to kill your body. They come to kill your belief in yourself. To make you back down before you even step up. To make you doubt the very truth God whispered to you in your quiet moments. And sadly, too many chosen ones give up before they even begin. Not because they lacked purpose, but because they never understood the war they were born into. That's why this message is not just information, it's revelation. It's a wake-up call to stop living blind, to stop dismissing the signs. You felt the warfare. You've lived it. You just didn't know what to call it. But now you do. And once you see it, you can no longer ignore it. You can no longer blame yourself for battles that weren't even yours to begin with. The guilt, the shame, the self-blame, let it go. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're chosen and under attack because of it. But here's the good news. If there's a war over your destiny, it means your destiny matters. If hell is fighting to stop you, it's because heaven has already empowered you. The very fact that you're still standing, after everything you've been through, is proof that you're not just in the battle, you're surviving it. And if you've survived it, you can win it. You can rise. You can overcome. You can take back everything that was stolen from you, not by fighting people, but by awakening to the truth of who you are. This isn't just about belief, it's about awareness. Once you become aware of the war, you stop living like a victim and start moving like a warrior. You stop retreating and start advancing. You stop accepting what is and start fighting for what could be. And that's what the enemy fears the most, not your strength, but your awakening. So, I ask you now, are you ready to see what you couldn't see before? Are you ready to stop explaining away your suffering and start understanding it? Because when you do, everything changes. The pain begins to make sense. The patterns become clear. And the power that's been buried under doubt and fear begins to rise. You were never meant to live unaware. You were meant to awaken. And this is your awakening. Why the chosen are targeted? You might have asked yourself more than once, why me? Why is it that when you try to do good, you're met with resistance? Why is it that when your heart is open, people take advantage of it? Why do you carry a weight others don't seem to notice or care about? Why does life feel like an uphill battle, even when you're doing everything right? The answer lies not in your flaws, but in your identity. You are chosen, and that is exactly why you're being targeted. The chosen ones are not targeted because they're perfect. They're targeted because they're powerful, because they carry something this world desperately needs: light, truth, healing, disruption. The kind of energy that can break cycles, shift atmospheres, and call others higher. But here's what many people don't understand. Power doesn't come without pressure. Purpose doesn't come without pain. And destiny never comes without opposition. If you were ordinary, the enemy would leave you alone. But you're not. And he knows it, even if you don't. That's why your struggles are not evidence of weakness. They are evidence of threat. The enemy doesn't bother people who aren't a danger to his agenda. But the moment you start walking in purpose, the warfare begins. And often, it starts early. Long before you understand who you are, the attacks begin. On your mind, your identity, your family, your confidence. You may think back and wonder why your childhood was marked by trauma or why people closest to you inflicted the deepest wounds. It's because darkness recognized your light before you ever did. You see, there is a tactic in warfare called preemptive strike. It's when the enemy attacks before you've had the chance to rise, before your potential becomes power, before your gifts become dangerous. That's exactly what happens to the chosen ones. They are attacked in seed form. Because a seed, if nurtured, becomes a tree. And that tree can provide shade, fruit, and shelter for many. So if the enemy can destroy the seed, he doesn't have to worry about the tree. But here's the beautiful irony. Your greatest wounds often point to your greatest calling. What broke you was meant to bury you. But you survived. And not just survived, you learned. You saw deeper. You felt stronger. You became more compassionate, more discerning, more aware. The fire didn't burn you out. It burned away everything that wasn't you. That's why the enemy couldn't fully succeed. Because even his attacks ended up shaping you into the very person who can now walk with purpose. But it's important to understand that the attacks are not random. They are surgical, strategic, intentional. They come to distort your view of yourself. Because if you don't know who you are, you'll never step into who you're meant to become. The enemy's goal is not to destroy your body. It's to destroy your belief in your identity. He knows that if you rise into your calling, you'll bring freedom to others. And freedom is contagious. One awakened soul can awaken generations. That's why betrayal hurts so deeply. That's why rejection cuts so sharply. It's not just personal, it's spiritual. Those wounds were aimed at the part of you that was born to lead, to love, to create, to restore. If the enemy can convince you that you are unlovable, you'll never step into your role as a healer. If he can make you feel invisible, you'll stop trying to influence. If he can make you believe your pain has no purpose, you'll live your whole life in survival mode, never stepping into the role of a warrior, a teacher, a lightbringer. And let's not forget the other tactic, distraction. If the enemy can't destroy you, he'll distract you. With toxic people, with fear, with doubt, with the approval of others. He'll try to drown your clarity in noise. He'll tempt you to compare, to compete, to chase empty validation. All of it is a strategy to keep you focused on things that don't matter, so you never have time to focus on what does. Because a distracted chosen one is just as ineffective as a destroyed one. But here's the shift. When you begin to understand that the attacks were not proof of your failure, but evidence of your calling, something inside of you begins to awaken. You stop playing small. You stop apologizing for your light. You stop wondering if you're worthy and start realizing you were born for this. The pain makes sense. The patterns make sense. The resistance makes sense. You're not crazy. You're not cursed. You are chosen, and the targeting proves it. Just look at the lives of the greatest changemakers in history. Moses was hunted at birth. David was overlooked by his own family. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. Jesus was despised by the very people he came to save. The pattern is clear. Those with the greatest purpose often endure the greatest pain. But they rise. They fulfill. And they don't just survive. They transform the world. You're part of that lineage. You didn't choose the calling. It chose you. But now that you know you carry it, you have a decision to make. Will you let the attacks define you or refine you? Will you keep asking, why me? Or start declaring, try me? Will you shrink under pressure or rise because of it? You've been targeted, yes, but not defeated, not broken, and not alone. Every trial you've faced has been a classroom. Every setback, a setup. Every attack, a signpost. You are not here by accident. You were born to disturb the darkness, to awaken the sleeping, to bring heaven closer to earth. And that's why you've been under fire, because you're on fire. Because your life, even in its brokenness, carries divine weight. And when you finally see that, nothing can stop you. So the next time you feel the enemy pressing in, don't panic. Smile. Because pressure is a sign that you're pressing into purpose. Resistance is a sign that you're on the right path. And the more you're targeted, the more you can be sure you are chosen for something greater than you can even imagine. Spiritual warfare requires spiritual awareness. You cannot fight what you refuse to see. And you cannot win a battle you don't know you're in. That is the silent tragedy of many chosen ones. Not that they weren't powerful enough to overcome, but that they walked through spiritual war zones unaware, unarmed, and unprepared. The greatest mistake you can make as a chosen one is to approach a spiritual war with a physical mindset. Because this is not just about the people who left you. It's not just about the job you lost, the relationship that broke you, or the setbacks that crushed your confidence. This is about something far deeper, far more strategic, far more dangerous. This is spiritual warfare, and it requires spiritual awareness. When you are chosen, you must become spiritually awake. Because the attacks that come against you aren't always obvious. They don't always wear a villain's face. Sometimes, they come disguised as comfort, as convenience, as the easy path. Sometimes, it's not the enemy that defeats the chosen, it's apathy. It's settling. It's sleeping on your potential. And while the world tells you to chase comfort, heaven calls you to clarity. Because clarity is what reveals the battlefield. The enemy's first strategy is always blindness. He doesn't need to take away your gifts. He just needs to make sure you never use them. And the way he does that is by keeping you distracted, discouraged, or deceived. He will fill your mind with noise. He will use your past to keep you stuck. He'll use fear to keep you small. And worst of all, he'll use your own thoughts against you. You think you're just being realistic, but really, you're rehearsing lies. Lies that were planted in moments of trauma, repeated through voices of doubt, and now play on loop in your head every time you try to rise. This is why spiritual awareness is not optional, it's survival. You have to start paying attention to what you feel, what you absorb, what you allow into your space. Not everyone who smiles at you is for you. Not every open door is a divine one. Not every opportunity is aligned with your calling. When you're chosen, discernment is your compass. Without it, you'll get lost in things that look good, but lead nowhere. You'll fight the wrong battles, waste your strength on surface-level problems, while the real war is being waged behind the scenes. You've got to see beyond the surface. When someone hurts you, don't just look at the person, look at the pattern. When your life feels stuck, don't just rearrange the outer world. Examine the spiritual atmosphere. Are you aligned? Are you listening? Are you still carrying old wounds that the enemy keeps weaponizing against you? Spiritual awareness means you don't just react, you reflect. You don't just survive, you see. You ask deeper questions. You tune in. You become a watcher of your own soul. The spiritually aware know when something feels off, even if they can't explain it. They know when to walk away, even when it doesn't make logical sense. They know when to stay still, even when the world says move. Because they aren't following the noise, they're following the whisper of God. The whisper that says, this isn't right. Don't go there. Wait a little longer. I've got something better. That whisper will save your life. But you can't hear it if your life is too loud. You must silence the noise to hear the signal. Turn down the volume on the world to turn up the voice of truth. That's why isolation often comes before elevation. The chosen are often pulled away, not because they're being punished, but because they're being prepared. The wilderness isn't a place of abandonment. It's a place of awakening. It's where your spiritual senses are sharpened, where your ears are trained to hear the divine, where you stop relying on opinions and start depending on purpose. But understand this. Once you become spiritually aware, the battle won't stop. It will intensify. Because now you're a real threat. Now you can see the enemy's tactics. Now you're breaking cycles that have held your family captive for generations. Now you're no longer falling for the same traps. So yes, you will be tested. Yes, you will be attacked. But now, you'll be ready. Because you're no longer blind. You're awake. You're watching. You're armored with truth. You know the difference between warfare and weakness, between distraction and direction, between fear and discernment. Spiritual awareness will teach you that not every storm is sent to destroy you. Some are sent to reveal you. That not every closed door is a loss. Some are protection. That sometimes your delay is divine. That sometimes God hides you so you can heal. That sometimes the battle is proof you're on the brink of breakthrough. When you start to see life through spiritual eyes, nothing catches you off guard. You no longer ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, you ask, what is this trying to teach me? What is this preparing me for? And most importantly, spiritual awareness brings peace. Not the kind of peace the world gives. The peace that comes from knowing you're in alignment. The peace that comes from understanding that even in the storm, you're anchored. Even in the fire, you're forged. Even in the battle, you're backed by heaven. You don't panic when you're attacked. You pray with power. You don't fold under pressure. You rise with purpose. You don't retreat. You remember who you are. So yes, there's a war over your destiny. But no, you're not powerless. You're not defenseless. You have weapons this world can't see. You have insight that fear cannot shake. You have wisdom that trials cannot steal. You are not just a body. You are a soul, a spirit, a force. And once you become aware of that, the game changes. You stop living reactive and start living prophetic. You move with intention. You speak with fire. You walk with vision. And no weapon formed against you can prosper. Because you see it coming and you know who you are. Winning the war you didn't know you were in. Now that you know the war is real, now that you've seen how the chosen are targeted and how spiritual warfare demands spiritual awareness, you're standing at the edge of something powerful. You're no longer in the dark. You're no longer asleep. And that changes everything. Because awareness is the beginning of victory, but not the end. Awareness wakes you up, but action sets you free. To win the war you didn't know you were in, you have to make a decision. To stop living on defense and start living with divine offense. You don't just dodge attacks, you reclaim territory. You see, the enemy never expected you to make it this far. He thought the betrayal would break you. He thought the depression would drown you. He thought the addiction, the shame, the silence, you name it, would swallow you whole. But here you are, still breathing, still believing, still rising. And that alone is proof that you were never fighting alone. Heaven has always had your back, even when you didn't realize it. The scars you carry? They're not shame. They're signs of survival. They're evidence that the darkness tried and failed. Because when God chooses someone, no devil in hell can cancel that call. But now it's time to rise beyond survival. You're not here just to endure life. You're here to overcome, to transform, to fulfill destiny. Winning the war means stepping fully into who you are. It means walking with the confidence that you were created for a purpose so great that even hell felt threatened before you ever took your first step. That's why the resistance was so intense, because the calling is that serious. You were chosen to break generational curses, to restore what was lost, to speak what others are afraid to say, to carry light into places so dark, your presence alone is warfare. And you don't win this war by pretending to be someone you're not. You win it by owning everything you are. Your gifts, your wounds, your failures, your fire. Everything you've been through has prepared you for this moment. The enemy's plan was to make you feel disqualified by your past. But God's plan was to use that very past as your platform. What once disempowered you now empowers others. What once silenced you now gives you something to say. You are the living proof that purpose survives the fire. So how do you win the war? You win it by renewing your mind daily. By refusing to let fear set the tone of your decisions. By guarding your peace like it's your most precious possession, because it is. You win by praying with power, not just out of panic. You win by staying connected to God, even when life gets loud. Especially when it gets loud. You win by breaking agreements with old lies. The ones that told you you're too broken, too late, too much, or not enough. You tear those contracts up. You write new ones in truth. Asterisk, I am chosen. I am protected. I am prepared. I am rising. Asterisk. You win by surrounding yourself with people who sharpen your spirit, not just stroke your ego. You stop explaining your calling to people who were never meant to carry it. You stop asking permission to be who God made you to be. Because chosen ones don't need approval. They need alignment. You don't have time to entertain distractions. You're in a war. And in war, you have to travel light. That means letting go of anything, anyone, that keeps you bound. Peace over popularity. Purpose over comfort. Obedience over opinion. And don't forget this. Your greatest weapon is your identity. When you know who you are, the enemy loses his leverage. He can't shame you when you already know you've been redeemed. He can't confuse you when you're anchored in clarity. He can't distract you when your eyes are locked on your assignment. The reason the enemy works so hard to distort your identity is because he knows once you remember who you are, you become unstoppable. Yes, the war is real, but so is your authority. So is your anointing. So is your assignment. You are not a victim. You are a warrior, a light in the dark, a walking declaration that God's plan is stronger than any plot against you. And now that you've seen the truth, you can't go back to sleep. Now that you're awake, you carry a responsibility, not just to survive, but to rise and lead. Others are watching. Others are waiting. Your obedience unlocks their freedom. So don't shrink. Don't settle. Don't second-guess what heaven has confirmed. You were marked for this, built for this, born for this. And no matter how fierce the attack, no matter how long the battle has raged, you are still chosen, still called, still victorious. You win this war by showing up every single day with truth in your mouth, peace in your heart, and fire in your spirit. You walk into rooms knowing the light you carry is greater than the darkness you face. You pray like you believe heaven hears you. You love like it's a weapon. You forgive like it sets you free. And you speak like chains will break when you open your mouth. Because they will. This is your season of clarity, your season of reclaiming, your season of rising. You may not have seen the war before, but now you do. And now, you fight back, not with fear, but with fire. Not with bitterness, but with boldness. Not with anxiety, but with authority. You win because you've already been equipped. You win because you're still standing. You win because you refuse to give up. And most of all, you win because the one who called you has never lost a battle. So rise, chosen one. The war was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to awaken you. And now that you're awake, the world better get ready.